Okie dokie. So my name's Molly. I have the YouTube channel Beauty Spectrum, and I've been uploading to that every week for the last 5 or 6 years now, which is actually crazy to think about. I post content online, all things from fashion, lifestyle, travel. Used to do a lot of makeup and beauty. Don't really do that anymore. Dabbled in student stuff. Don't really do that anymore. It's a little bit of everything, really. Yeah, there's not much I haven't tried, and I'm lucky enough that it's now my full-time job, and it has been for the last 2 years. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
No, that's fine. So there's two questions I want to ask straight away. So with it being your full-time job, like how do you find that? How did you find the change to that? And then how do you also find the reaction when you actually say that to people?
Yeah.
How does that all, yeah?
Obviously, it was quite a big step because I'd been in like full-time education for my whole life, and I've never worked in a regular job. So I had like a part-time job throughout school, but I took this pretty much straight from education, and I haven't ever had like a middle ground. So obviously, I'm in a very unique situation, and I think that by the time I came to doing it full-time, I was 100% on that was the right thing for me at the time. Like I'd spent a long time weighing up the options. And to be honest, I went to university for a year to kind of trial that. And I was like, oh, is this for me? Or is this just solidifying the fact that I actually do just want to go self-employed now? And to be honest, that was what that did. And if it was good for anything, it was good for that. So yeah, it was a weird transition, but I think it was the right time to do it. But in terms of people's reaction, it is definitely a mixed bag. People my age tend to really understand it because we've kind of grown up with it becoming more of a thing. And I think by now most people appreciate that it is a sustainable job. But when I talk to older people, like obviously my parents understand it, but their friends and my extended family don't necessarily understand it. And it is a weird one. And a lot of people say, oh, like, when are you going to get a real job? Like, when are you going to apply for a job? And I'm like, well, I have a job. This is a job. And people just don't understand that I'm actually making an income from it that is like, you know, sustainable and like pretty decent. And it's a hard one to explain because if they don't understand it and if they're not on social media and they don't watch YouTube, it's like talking to a brick wall. You might as well not, because you're not going to get through to them. So it's a weird one.
I know that feeling because obviously with what I do when I first went like self-employed and set up by myself, even like my certain members of my family, I had really supportive family members, but other people in my family were like that quote that you said there of when are you going to get a proper job? It's like, okay, that's a bit rude, but okay. And then suddenly, and still now, like I'll get questions like, obviously because as some people know, have set up Peach Street Clothing. Even then I still get things like, oh, but what is that? And like, how are you going to do that? How are you going to, it's just like, okay, fair enough. It's quite hard to get past to the point. So the other thing I wanted to ask as well is obviously you upload, is it weekly on YouTube?
Yeah, like 3 times on YouTube.
3 times. So how do you like, is that quite a big commitment for you, or have you found it like easier doing it now? Because obviously that for people who don't use YouTube, I think some people, and I know some people do, think it's really simple. Like they generally think you film something and then like you save it, great, and then put it on YouTube. And like that process doesn't exist. It's not a 5-minute job. As you know, as I know. So like how long does it take you to get used to that? And like, is it easier than it was before to commit to that 3 times a week?
I think it's probably easier now, obviously, because I am doing it full time. When I was juggling it alongside university and especially sixth form, especially my A-levels, I just did not have enough hours in the day. I think there was a point when I was in year 13 where I was juggling full-time A-levels. I was learning to drive. I was doing my YouTube. I had a boyfriend, and I was like, I literally just didn't have enough hours. So I definitely think it's easier now because I do have more time to dedicate to it. But then in the same breath, I think that I put a lot more effort and a lot more time into it now than I did then because I have more time to give. But I think you get used to it. So when I first started the process, I didn't know how to edit, and I was not only was I editing the video, but I was teaching myself how to do it at the same time. So that slows it down. Whereas obviously now I know how to do it and I can do it pretty quickly. And I think because I am quite dedicated and I'm quite strict with my, like, this is 3 times a week, and I've done that for years, I kind of know how much time I need to set aside each day to make sure I'm going to manage that. And I think it's just something I've got used to. People ask me all the time, like, how do you stay motivated to make sure you do that? But I think it's the same as anybody in any job that's not got somebody telling them how or what to do. You just have to do it all yourself.
Yeah, 100%. What does, So obviously there's a lot of people who are probably watching this who create YouTube videos or want to. What does that whole process look like, right from like you planning a video to it going live? Like what does that process look like? What things you do?
Again, it varies depending on what the video is. Some things come super naturally. So like this year it's been a bit harder. I've had to think a lot more imaginatively. Like usually I film based on what I'm doing in my life, but obviously this year I haven't done a great deal. So it was harder. But I usually plan probably about 2 weeks in advance, because sometimes I do videos that take like a week to film, and I'll film it over the process of like 7 days. So I'll plan it 2 weeks in advance, then I film it, and then I'll try to always edit it like 4 to 5 days before it goes up. Sometimes it's less, sometimes I'm still editing it on the day it's going up. It does depend on how busy I am, but yeah, it's probably a 2 week process for each video, but then that's also 3 times a week, so I'm 2 weeks ahead for 3 videos all the time, if that kind of makes sense. It's a weird, it works in my head. It's weird to say out loud.
No, that is a lot, and I think that helping some people like understanding that, because I know that some people are like, I'm going to do a YouTube video. They either don't think about it enough, or they overthink it to the point that they then don't want to do it because they're scared. And I know that's quite a big thing. Even for me, obviously, like this podcast, for example, I put off doing for like a year nearly, because I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to record it. I'm gonna have to plan it out. I'm gonna have to edit it. I'm gonna have to post it to everywhere. And then suddenly I was like, actually, you know what? I just need to do it. And then it's actually, you know what? It's a bit easier of a process than I thought it was. It's not easy, but easier than I thought.
Yeah. No, definitely.
So one thing I want to ask, obviously, because we've known each other now for a couple of years, and it's something that you featured sort of recently on your Instagram. And I know it's something that I've featured a lot on this podcast, and I go through myself, and that's negative comments.
Yeah.
How do you sort of like get past your negative comments? Because obviously I know you had a few on a recent video, and I know we had like a little bit of a chat about it.
Yeah.
But how do you sort of, I know a lot of younger people really struggle with even like the small negative comments, but how do you sort of deal with them? And yeah.
I think it's horrible regardless of if you get one or if you get 10, 100, 1,000. Like it's horrible to think that somebody out there is being so spiteful enough to actually write it down and send it to you. Like what I don't understand is what's going through their head when they're sending that, because like even if I genuinely didn't like somebody online and I didn't like what they were doing, I would never write it down and tell them. I might say it to somebody in real life or like think it, but I just wouldn't do it. So I struggle to understand it, which means that then it really bothers me. And I think it depends on my mood as to how it affects me. Like if I'm in like I don't want to like listen to them, they're so wrong, and I'm like sassy with it and I'm like, well, whatever. But if I'm already feeling a bit down, or I'm just having just like one of those days, and then I read stuff like that, it does really bother me. And I think that the way I usually handle it is to ignore it. But I also think sometimes it's hard to ignore, because if the comment is about something like personal, or it's about one of my family members or my boyfriend, I get really defensive, which I think is natural. Like anybody does.
100%.
But normal people don't deal with it on a scale that's like every single time people are saying stuff like that. And I think this year specifically has been really hard, because it's very hard to get the balance of like what you can and can't share, right? Because people find there's an issue with everything. And obviously you have to draw the line of like, am I doing this for me or am I doing this for them? And I think that it's difficult, and it does get me down, but I also think the pros of the job outweigh that. I don't get negative comments, and I never understand like why people. I always think that like, how low must somebody be to go out of their way to leave a negative comment? And I know a lot recently, I know obviously you had some on one of your videos, and that's like with Corona and COVID, people are then going to like the opposite extreme, where they're like, oh well, I know such and such who fell ill with it, and now like you're slightly to blame. And I think that that's the thing I don't understand with negative comments. I don't understand it, especially with stuff like that that's gone on this year. I think if you start pointing the blame at people, especially people you don't know online, it's just creating such a horrible environment, when in my head, the best way to deal with all of this is just to be nicer to people. Surely everybody just wants to be nicer right now, not more horrible, but it's turned people so the other way in some situations that I just think that you can't please everybody. So it's impossible.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I wanted. One of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast, because I know there's a lot of, it's what you said earlier on as well about how that like younger people, sort of our age, understand like YouTube and understand that it is a full-time job, and you probably do more hours than most people. But a lot of like, I don't want to stereotypical or anything like that, but some people, possibly older people, some younger people, think that it's like really easy and you don't have to deal with anything. And that's one thing that I want to sort of break down with this, because there's a lot of people who are probably going through similar. There's a lot of people who want to do YouTube but are scared about them comments, whether it's family, friends, some random stranger in another country or down the road from you. And that was obviously quite a big thing for me, because obviously, especially with social media, everybody looks like they've got a perfect life and it's an easy route. And oh yeah, we're here now, we're here, there, we're going here now, we're going. And that's one thing I sort of want to like break down for people, that to actually have somebody who does it as a full-time thing, go, actually, do you know what? It is not easy.
No,
it's not that piece of cake that some people think it is.
No, certainly not. It's a hard one to explain, because I think if you just look at it and take it at face value, that is what it looks like, and I appreciate that. And that's where I sometimes try to keep that in my mind when I'm reading comments like that, because I think, well, they don't know and they've got no reason why they would, so it's okay. And I think a good example is like when I met my boyfriend, he was like, I don't understand how you do that and you're like making money from it. And I was like, oh, okay, well, like I'll kind of explain it. And then obviously now that we've been together for quite a while, he's like, you work so hard. When normal people have like Friday evening, you know, off, I'll be like, okay, I'm really busy, because Friday night is always like my busiest night of the week. I have a video first thing on Saturday morning, so I'm like all night on Fridays. And my boyfriend's like, Molly, people finish at 5, and I'm like, oh, I don't finish at 5. Like other people, okay, they get up, they go to work at 9 o'clock, they come home at 5 o'clock, and that's it. They're switched off from their job because they're their work hours, that's their office hours, and they're done. But when you have everything in your own house and the only person telling you to do stuff is yourself, it doesn't stop, because it's around the clock job. And I think there'll be some nights where I'm way more motivated at like 10 p.m, 11 p.m, and I'll sit and I'll work through until the early hours of the morning, because that's when I feel more motivated. And also it means then I can do stuff with my days that maybe people with a 9 to 5 can't do, because I can go out and, you know, socialize or like walk the dog or like stuff that people can't do that are at work. It's very flexible, and that's why I like it. But at the same time, it then looks like it's not a job. So I see both sides, but obviously,
I get that, because obviously that's one of the reasons I don't work for somebody or anybody, is because I'm very much sort of like, I don't set an alarm in the morning. I get up naturally, and even that like small thing makes a massive difference to my life. But I know the whole, like, you'll get to like 8, 9 o'clock some nights and you're like, actually, you know what, I really want to crack on now. And I can get it done a lot quicker than if I did it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
100%, totally.
So with obviously, because you work with a lot of brands, and obviously a brand in particular that I'll mention in a minute, but I don't want to like big sell it up or anything, but obviously I want to mention it as well. So when it comes to working with brands, because there'll be business owners listening now who want to get into like influencer marketing, affiliate marketing. What sort of like good and bad experiences have you had with brands, and sort of is there any like advice you'd give to a brand that listening now who might want to work with somebody like yourself?
I think obviously it depends a lot of the time on what the brand is. I think that's the big one. And obviously when I first started out on YouTube, I was predominantly doing makeup and beauty and fashion. So I worked with a lot of brands that fall under makeup and beauty and fashion. Whereas now I've kind of shifted my content a lot more towards like lifestyle, travel. So I've worked with completely different brands. So I feel like I've seen a huge spectrum of different, people. And I would say the best experiences, most positive experiences, are the brands that let you have creative freedom, because sometimes I'll work with a brand and they send over a brief so strict that it's like they might as well have sent me a script. And sometimes that's fine, because if it is quite a niche thing that they're selling or that they want, then that's easier, because it's better than it going back and forth and me constantly getting it wrong. But if it's so strict to the point where it's like, well, I like the product, I genuinely do, but I don't like how you're working with me because you're telling me what to say when this is like my channel, my content. I don't really love that. And I've had some briefs that I work with are so free, and you send it back to them and it's the other way, and they're like, oh, well, actually we wanted this and this, and I'm like, well, I'd rather you just said. So I think the perfect ones is where it's like they give you a rough outline of what they want, but they let you have control of the content. That's usually the best brand to work with.
Yeah, that's good. It's that freedom, but like having a bit of control to it. Because I've seen sort of like, I've helped brands find influencers and like YouTubers and stuff, and they go to the opposite, like, oh, we need like a 4-page contract. They need to be posting at 4 o'clock on a Friday and Sunday at 2 o'clock, and it needs to be this and this. And the very first thing I always say to them is, that's a no-go straight away. Or it's, oh, well, we'll send the product on Friday. It'll be with them on Monday. So they need to post it by like Tuesday afternoon. And again, it's sort of like, that's where like coming into and knowing what somebody's schedule is like for a YouTuber, knowing that they are editing videos for like big chunks of day, and it's more than just YouTube as well, because that's what I'm going to get into as well.
Definitely,
because obviously you are on YouTube, but what would you say like your next biggest platform is, one that you enjoy working with?
Probably Instagram, and I would say probably Instagram is my biggest platform in terms of advertising and making money anyway, which is, well, maybe not directly, but especially with brands. I think obviously YouTube has its separate, like you can monetize YouTube separately in a way that you can't monetize Instagram. But I would say generally more brands come to me and want to work with me on Instagram. And also I think sometimes creating content on there is more fun because it's shorter, it's snappier, and especially with the new features that they've introduced over the last year, you can do a lot more with Instagram than you used to be able to. And I think that now that's where I like putting content more, because you also get a better interaction with viewers. I think obviously on YouTube you have comments, but Instagram is, again, just so many more features, so many more ways to interact, that I think that I prefer it as a platform and use it probably more than YouTube.
Yeah, with Instagram, obviously this is probably the best place to mention it. Obviously, as some people listening, watching might know, might not know, me and Molly have obviously set up a clothing brand called Peach Street Clothing, and obviously I know for us, like a big thing of that is our biggest platform is Instagram. And that's for many different reasons. So we both prefer Instagram, but I think we noticed that with what we're going to be doing and the clothing types, that Instagram is going to be like a better fit right from the start.
Yeah, definitely.
Because obviously, like you said, the features there's a lot more engagement there. It's a lot easier. I find it a lot easier to reach people as well.
Yeah, definitely.
It's simple things like we'll use like certain hashtags, and suddenly we've reached like 100 people that we wouldn't have reached normally. And stories as well is something that I really want to mention, because stories are like, is so undervalued that brands and businesses aren't using it. But like we obviously, for example, for Peach Street Clothing, is that we'll do a post, and it'll maybe get like 10, 12, 15 likes to start with. We'll then post on our story, and soon like 200 people have seen it. Suddenly the likes like double, if not triple, and then suddenly our website views have gone up as well. So that's one thing that I'd recommend to like a lot of brands, is that Instagram stories is so like undervalued and underused. And it's I know when it comes to Instagram, I only scroll through about 20 posts.
Yes.
With stories, I'll like watch loads of them.
100%.
And that's one thing I also want to like recommend to everybody, is that Instagram stories is definitely the way forward. But obviously, if somebody is watching with everything going on, I've noticed a lot more people wanting to like create a personal brand and get themselves out there a lot more. So what sort of tips and advice would you give somebody who, whether they are into doing beauty reviews, whether they want to do lifestyle, travel, they might want to do like gaming or anything like that? What sort of tips would you give them when it comes to social media?
I think it's so difficult, because I get asked this all the time, and I'm like, honestly, I don't know, because I think if I could offer one piece of advice that would just gain you following overnight, everybody would be talking about it. But I think generally the thing that's worked for me and continues to work for me is just being like authentic and being yourself. So I think people that have followed me for a while know that I've always kind of been not the same, because I think I've definitely changed and adapted, like I've grown up. But I also think that I've always been quite like just normal, and I think that's what's worked for me, because people watch because they either relate or they just like that I'm not putting on some kind of act. And I think if you can stay true to yourself, then that's probably the best way. But also in terms of like actual content, I think posting regularly and like, you know, keeping on top of everything, replying to comments, interacting, because engagement is so key on all social media to like boost the algorithm, which is something I don't fully understand. And I've been on Instagram for such a long time, and they update it all the time, and every time they do, something different has changed and it doesn't quite work the same. You just wrap your head around it and they change it again. But like generally I'd say being authentic and uploading regularly are like my two main things.
100%. And I think that there's something that you said right at the start there that you might not realize is a tip, and that is like social media is a long game. Like there is no real like overnight fixes, unless you can get a video that goes viral suddenly or get a picture that goes viral. There's no like quick fix. And a lot of people come to me, obviously with running a social media agency, going, oh well, I want 100 followers in a week, or I want 1,000 followers in a week. And the first thing is why. But the second thing is you're like missing out on a massive opportunity that is not going to happen. And obviously another thing,
be like ambitious, but having targets like that doesn't work, because you're setting yourself up to be disappointed straight away.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the other thing as well, is like followers aren't everything as well, because there's
Yeah.
brands and people out there who have like 10,000 followers, but they're only getting like 50 likes on a post. And it's like, that's a bit weird.
Yeah.
Whereas you might have 10,000 followers, but get like 1,000 engaged people, which is perfect.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's what brands always say when they come to me, when they reach out. Obviously, they can see my following by clicking on my profile, but they're like, we want to see your engagement, your demographic, your audience. And that's then when they decide if they want to work with me. It's nothing directly to do with my followers.
Yeah, definitely. And the whole like viral video as well, is a lot of people think it's easy to get a viral video. And like it's the most random, because there's one at the moment on TikTok. I don't know if you've seen it. It's the guy who's drinking it's our equivalent of like Capri Sun, I think it is, and he's on a skateboard going down the road to Fleetwood Mac by Dreams. And have you not seen it?
No, I haven't seen it.
It's what this week. I think his name's something like 420 Dogface or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
But that started like a whole conversation at the moment, because he did that and he went down the road and he's on a skateboard drinking a drink, and one that went viral because of the way it was.
Yeah.
It suddenly got Dreams by Fleetwood Mac back in like every music chart possible.
No way.
And then whatever drink he's drinking, it's annoying because I can't think what the drink is. That's been their like best advert ever, because all he was doing was like drinking, and that's how like random viral videos can be. And that's obviously something like he purposely, obviously he didn't do that on purpose, but like if you purposely try and get a viral video, it's not going to work.
No,
oh my god! Always like the run.
Everybody would be doing that every week on YouTube. It'd be like, yeah, this is my viral video. And I think there are trends that you can like piggyback off, and you can definitely try and attract an audience that way. But in terms of actually going viral, you can't predict it, and also it's not always helpful, even if you can. Because I have a few friends that have had viral videos, and like viral to the level of like 20 million people have seen it, and they'll gain crazy subscribers, like hundreds of thousands, if not like almost 1 million subscribers, but they don't come back to watch. It's like they saw that one viral video, but then the rest of their views on their video are sitting at like 20,000, 30,000, which is great, but it's not the same. And it's like you've now got a really kind of like out of touch connection between your views and your subscribers. They don't level up, so it's not always helpful.
Yeah, it's about dealing with it once it goes viral as well, because I know a lot of people who like they'll have a viral video but then they won't post again for like 2 weeks, and it's like you need to like, because there's a lot. Obviously I want to talk a bit about TikTok as well, because obviously you're on it. It's now like one of the biggest ones out there. And I always go back to Charlie, who is the most followed person on TikTok. She will post something and like within an hour it's got like 8 million likes, and it's ridiculous.
She is crazy.
And people think they can replicate that like easily. And that's one thing that with TikTok obviously I want to advise on, is that it takes a while to get to that level, because you've got people like Charlie, you've got her sister, you've got Addison Rae and all these, and they didn't just happen to get their followings overnight and all their likes, but now they're on that point, they're consistent with it. So obviously you use TikTok. How do you find TikTok? Do you enjoy it, or do you not as?
I mean, I love it as a viewer. From a viewer's perspective, I think TikTok is great. It's just amusing and it's quick and it's snappy. And I am also quite like, sometimes you don't want to watch a full YouTube video, so I'll scroll through TikTok and I'm like, cool, I'm done now. Like I'm happy with that. And I think that's great. As a person creating TikToks, I think it's really, really bizarre to navigate, because you can post the most random thing and it will just blow up. Like I did this video that was not even anything special. It was just me doing an unpopular opinions thing, and it just got 500,000 views. And I was like, cool, do you guys want to subscribe to my YouTube? Because like that was random and a bit unnecessary and like nothing special, and I wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary. And then I'll make one that I think's really good and I've put way more effort in, and it doesn't hit the algorithm. So it's like, okay, I don't know how this platform works at all, but it is an interesting platform. It's definitely up and coming and huge.
Yeah, I agree with that, because I've only just started using TikTok again, like for my own videos, and I was playing around with Snapchat filters, and there was one, it was like a year ago, and I was with my nephew, and it was a seagull dancing in the back garden, and he wanted to film that with some random audio over it, and I can't think what it was. And he was like, oh, can we post it to TikTok? So I did, and I posted it, and then I went back on in the evening, like sort of about 8 hours later, and it had 50,000 views like that.
No way.
I was like, what the hell? But then the video like before that was the Joker, and like my partner had done my makeup, and we'd planned this whole video out, and she did Harley Quinn and all that, and we got like 1,000 views.
Yeah.
And we were like, there's one that took literally 30 seconds to film, was filmed by my 9-year-old nephew at the time, got that many views, and that's the thing TikTok.
I can't predict it. It's so bizarre. But it is fun. It is a laugh. I think that there's a lot of potential with TikTok. I think it'll really only continue to get bigger.
I think it'll get bigger, and it's the thing that you said there as well about how like it's quick videos and not enough businesses and brands, because I've worked with a couple of brands who want to get on it, and they're like, oh yeah, well, we'll film our product doing this and this and this. And for me, obviously this is advice and tip for everybody, is that it's about like soft product placement, which is sort of where you get something and you just wave it around in the background and it's instead of going, this is the iPhone and like that. It doesn't work. And that's probably going back to that video of the guy drinking the Capri Sun. Like that was the biggest promo they could have ever asked for, and it was free. Whereas if they'd gone a video and gone, this is our drink and this is what it does, it's great, and it
would get less engagement. So I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, and another one that I've seen that works with a lot of brands is they document their journey. So they sort of say that we package, like they'll document them packaging stuff up, they're sending it out, like engaging and showing the whole process, and that's worked really well for a lot of brands.
Yeah, that is a popular way of doing it. My TikTok For You page is filled with little businesses that started in like lockdown, and it's like, this is where we're at now, and I'm like, oh, good for you.
Yeah, there's a couple. I've got somebody that will be on the podcast hopefully later on today, who she started to use TikTok a lot, and then there's another one in Australia called I can't think what she's called, but she does basically it's something for your hair so it slicks back. I think it's actually called Slick Back or Slick Up, and her sales went like through the roof overnight purely because she posted like her doing orders and showing her desk and all this. Yeah, and she was like, I never thought that would happen. So that's like that's the thing with TikTok. It is easier to go viral, I think, than other platforms.
Oh, definitely, yeah, without a doubt.
But also at the same time, it's really hard to do it.
Yeah, it is. You can't predict it, but if it happens, like if it starts gaining traction, it's way more likely to keep gaining traction on Instagram, on TikTok than it is on other platforms. I don't understand it, but it seems to work. Yeah,
definitely. So there's only sort of like a couple of things that I wanted to touch on a little bit, because obviously you mentioned earlier that you had gone to university, and obviously I know you're quite open with it on your YouTube. You did a whole obviously a couple of videos on it, and you spoke about it on your Instagram. So do you want to sort of like tell that what happened when you went to uni and go from there? Because obviously you're probably better saying it than I
am. Yeah, so I basically I just didn't know what I wanted to do when I left school. So I left sixth form in 2018. I think, yeah. And I really didn't know what it was I wanted to do. And all my friends were dead set on degrees, and they were like, oh, I'm going to be a lawyer, I'm going to be a psychologist. And I was like, oh my God, all I enjoy doing is like making videos. I don't know what I want to do. But I didn't want to go straight into doing YouTube full time. I wasn't really in a position where it was like financially viable. And I also thought, maybe I'm missing out on something if I don't try this. So I applied for a 1-year course at Leeds Art University, and it was only ever a 1-year course. Like I didn't start an undergraduate. I did a foundation year. And a lot of people do that with the intention of then doing a 3-year degree in something similar. And it was basically just a really broad course doing everything in art and design. So it was like fine art, but then it was also like photography, video editing, Photoshop. And as it went on, you like specialize in one thing. So I basically like did this course in photography. I specialized in photography. And then when I left, all my friends applied to do a full undergraduate. And I was like, I think I've decided that this was fine, but I'm done now, because I really didn't enjoy it. I moved to Leeds and I was so homesick, and I really, really didn't enjoy the university atmosphere at all. Like I love the city of Leeds. I fell completely in love with it, but being a student just really was not for me. And I thought, I'm not forcing myself to do this when I'm in a lucky enough position that I can make this a job, and I'll be happier doing that. So I thought, okay, that seems like a sensible decision. I don't really care what anybody else thinks. My parents were supportive, so that was all I really needed. Yeah. So I left and I moved back home, and I thought, I feel like I've made the right decision. And then I kind of set out to have like a gap year, which I started. I did start that. I went to Australia and had the best time ever, but then obviously coronavirus had other plans. It came back home. And who knows if or when that will ever resume. But that was the plan, was to travel and kind of, sorry if you can hear that. No, sorry. The plan was to do that and kind of just work it out as I was going, because for as long as doing YouTube and doing social media was financially an option, I kind of wanted to use that while I could, and then see what happens from there. But yeah, being a student just wasn't really my thing.
Yeah, I wanted to like cover that because I know, especially with how universities are at the moment, because obviously like there's people who are having to do online classes, there's people who are like locked down in dorms and stuff. That my thing is that university wasn't my route either, and I knew that from the start that I didn't want to do it. As soon as I sort of went to college, I realized that education wasn't for me, and I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
And it's the same with when I was like 20 and I had a job that I realized I didn't want to work for somebody.
Yeah.
So I sort of wanted to that's why I wanted you to sort of share that, to show that it is fine that you don't go to uni, or it's fine that you get to uni and you realize it's not right. Because obviously the one thing that a lot of people do is they either do something and are unhappy the whole way through and then get to the end and wish that they didn't do it.
Yeah.
And you get other people who go, actually, do you know what? Who are like 30, 40, I really wish I went to uni when I had the chance.
Yeah.
But it shows that people do make decisions and they do go through with it. But sometimes it's not the right decision, because that's the big thing in life, is that everybody makes mistakes, or everybody does something that they don't like.
Yeah.
It's just about like coming out from that and knowing that sometimes it's the better option, or that you have learned something. Because obviously, you could still be at uni now and you wouldn't be happy about it, and you'd be like, oh, I really wish I left.
Yeah, and that's what I always think. I think I'm glad I tried it. I am genuinely, even though I don't think I gained anything massively from it. If I hadn't have done it, I wouldn't have known. So like it was a learning curve, but I'm glad that I did it.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, perfect. Well, I think you've given like an eye opener to the world of YouTube and what like you have to do as your day to day. You've given advice to sort of like brands and businesses out there. If you could sort of leave with, it doesn't have to be motivational, it doesn't have to be anything in particular, but if you wanted to leave on sort of like one note, whether that's tip advice, what would it be?
Oh, I would say, I mean, this does sound a little bit inspirational, a bit cheesy, but like, don't let anybody tell you that you can't do something. I think if you have an idea, no matter what it is, if it seems just a little bit crazy or a little bit out of the norm, just go for it. I think all you can really do is try. And I think people are so puffed by other people's opinions and what people might say and judgments from people that might be your friends, but probably aren't, because if they were, they wouldn't be like that. Just go for it. I think that would be my closing advice.
100%. I agree with that as well. And that's a big thing that a lot of people need to take, is sort of like, just do it regardless of what people say. Even little things in life, sometimes it's worth just doing it. And definitely.